The Ashes is the ultimate prize in English cricket.
Up comes Botham now. He bowls to Alderman. I bowled him and England have won!
And he bowls to Stokes, who hammers it for 4! And stands there with the bat raised. I can't believe we've seen that.
England have won by 2 runs!
England have only won once in Australia in the last 34 years. 8 series, 1 victory.
Dawson comes up and bowls to Waugh, who drives through the offside for his 100. That is extraordinary.
Nasser Hussain has won the toss and inserted Australia in what you'd have to say are very good conditions here.
England have 10 players in their squad who have played on an Ashes tour before. So what have they learnt from those trips? And what makes Australia such a unique place to tour?
You've got to be aggressive but patient with that aggression.
We bigged it up so much about, the Aussies and the sledging and the crowd and the press and all that, instead of probably just focusing more on ourselves and not worrying about the other stuff.
The key to us is, as players, we're just really honest with how everyone's feeling, and we stick together of the mindset, because we want everyone happy to be able to win there.
This is Project Ashes. England's record this century in Australia makes pretty grim reading. Played 25, won 4, drawn 2, lost 19. Let's go back to the first of those series, 2002, and things started badly on the very first day.
Ponting this time flicks into the onside. Jones has been beaten there. I thought he was going to dive for a moment, but he hasn't done. He's running down towards the boundary now. Oh no! Oh, this could be very bad news. He has fallen over. He was going to dive. I think he's wrenched his knee. And he's down there writhing in pain. The ball's gone for 4, but Jones there completely missed.
To replace Jones, England called up a 27-year-old Yorkshire fast bowler who hadn't played a test for nearly 3 years.
I was at home and just got a phone call saying, get yourself ready, there's a possibility you're going. Then they sent me for a medical, and on my way home I confirmed that the place was mine as I was coming out here. The phone never stopped ringing.
Fast forward nearly 2 decades, and that fast bowler is now England's head coach, Chris Silverwood. But he was injured in his very first test on the tour, joining Jones, Flintoff, Giles and Gough on the injury list for the series. Also on that tour was the wicketkeeper, James Foster, who's back out in Australia this time with England's coaching team.
The Simon Joney injury was horrific. It was just horrible to witness, horrible to see at the Gabba on that day. I also remember him getting stretchered off, and again, I remember talking to Simon afterwards and how the crowd are just getting stuck into him. And then they drafted in Chris Silverwood or Spoons, as is known. And then, like you say, I remember Spoons playing at Perth. But I remember I think it was his ankle. He busted his ankle or did something. So he was out. And I also remember Nas throwing his toys out the pram as usual. I think he might have nicked off. He might have got 70 or 80. And I think he was obviously eyeing up 100. But I remember watching the TV in the change room. You can see him he's got out and he's walking up the steps. It goes into the change room. I think he's either looked at his dismissal or something. And then it's all of a sudden, I don't know what it was kicking, but he then just started whacking, kicking the life out of something. I don't know if it was Spoons' crutches. I don't know if it was bats. I've got no idea. But it was taking an absolute beating, whatever it is. And it's one of those where you're chuckling inside. I mean, everyone's been there with those sort of incidents in cricket changing rooms where someone's having a moment and everyone's just chuckling away. But you just think, oh my God, it's England captain. Do not get caught laughing when I'm watching it on the TV.
Well, that serves as a reminder of just how much pressure an England captain is under when they tour Australia, because an Ashes tour is a tour like no other. Here's Foster again.
We met at the airport, normally the night before we travel. And people had always sort of mentioned before, the Ashes tour's very different than most other tours that you go on. Maybe beforehand you might have the odd interview and you'd kind of say that as a bit of a line because that's what you've heard. But obviously not knowing it. But I remember then the atmosphere at the hotel before we flew, more the buzz from all the press guys. And I was like, wow, this seems to ramped up. And then I remember getting to Australia and just absolutely loving it. It's such a wonderful country to tour. Well, I would have been 22 at the time. So, life's pretty good. Yeah, we were in Perth and you'd pick up the newspaper and we'd maybe had a couple of days training. We'd done some catches on the outfield at the Wacker. And then I remember like seeing the back page of one of the newspapers in Perth, and it had like showing like 4 or 5 guys dropping catches, like still pictures of them dropping catches. You're like, how is this like worthy of back page news, like sporting news? Which I found rather odd, but I then kind of realised that the more and more you're there, it was almost just putting a little bit of pressure on the English, just wherever you went. And I also remember when we were in Perth, we used a gym which was maybe like a 5-10 minute walk away, and we're like, you'd be wearing your England kit, and you'd have like big England on the back of your shirt, and you'd be walking to the gym. People should be driving past, shouting out the window, saying, "Oh, you're not rubbish," and all that sort of stuff. So it was like, okay, this has definitely got a different kind of tempo about it.
Watching that tour from the comfort of his home was a 16-year-old Stuart Broad.
I've seen tours, notably when I was a fan, was it 2002? It was like a bowler was coming back every 2 days, wasn't it, or something ridiculous. So you do need an armoury of fast bowlers.
I mean, it's your last one, let's be honest. You could look at me like that. It's probably your last trip to Australia for the Ashes. So, I mean, that's what a draw that is.
Yeah, I mean, a huge draw. Yeah, to answer your question, it's massive. The thought of playing at Brisbane, Melbourne, New Year's Test, and for me, Molly's never been to Australia ever. So that, like, what she's desperate to be able to see New Year and in Sydney and all that sort of jazz. So they're very special trips, aren't they? They're Australia's a wonderful country. You feel like it is England versus Australia over there. It's not just England versus the Australian cricket team. It's England versus Australia, and they're amazing experiences to be on. But I think the key to us is, as players, we're just really honest with how everyone's feeling, and we stick together the mindset, because we want everyone happy to be able to win there. You know that 2010, when I look back at that winning tour, it was probably the happiest tour that you're ever going to go on.
It's the best, wasn't it?
Oh, it was the happiest tour. All the players got on really well with the media, if you remember. It was just a lot of fun. All the supporters felt really close. So you can't go to Australia bunker down and have a lot of success. I think you do need that support system around you. India won this winter, India won in Australia, didn't they? And they took their families, so that should give us some encouragement.
That line, you feel like it's England versus all of Australia, is one that gets mentioned a lot. Jimmy Anderson, we're playing his 5th Ashes tour, and he knows what to expect.
Well, the best way to describe it is it's noisy. There's lots of stuff going on, whether it's in the media or with the fans or with the players. It's generally noisy and busy. Like, there's lots of stuff going on, lots of distractions. So I think the best thing, or the most important thing that you need to do, is try and block all that out, because obviously the cricket is the most important thing on a tour like this, and it's just trying to get your head around how to manage everything else, because it does feel like, of all the tours we go on, it feels like it's got the most media focus, it's got the most just stuff going on around it, and I think it's how you manage that. The team that manages that the best it generally comes out on top. A lot of it is trying to, or finding a way of blocking it out. So for me, I'll throw myself into the cricket and the practice, potentially try and stay away from social media. Anything that's going to slightly distract you and take you off course, I think you've got to try and avoid. And I think trying to make it light-hearted as well. You've got to enjoy tours like this. It's an amazing experience, and not many people get to play in an Ashes series. So you've got to try and treasure it while you do play in it. So I think it's just trying to concentrate as much as you can on the cricket. That your skills is what is going to win the series for England. So you get around each other, trying to support each other as much as we can, and enjoy it. Yeah.
It's not difficult to think of an example of the noise that Jimmy refers to, small incidents that get blown out of proportion. On the last tour, it was alleged that Johnny Bairstow headbutted the Australian opener Cameron Bancroft in a bar. In reality, it was little more than a socially awkward greeting, but it was headline news for days. I remember Andrew Strauss was wheeled out to explain it all.
Well, I think it's fair to say he was completely baffled and surprised and shocked that this was a massive issue. You know, what happened there was, you know, I think when people mention a headbutt, there's a connotation around aggression, you know, malicious behaviour, intent to hurt and all that sort of stuff.
Assault.
And it was anything but this. You know, it was a bit of a jest, a joke. It's something that he does apparently with his rugby mates. I have no idea why he'd do such a thing, but it's just a little bump of heads. It's not a headbutt. It's a minor issue, but it obviously, you know, highlights the fact that in an Ashes series, minor issues can become major issues.
It's just one of many incidents that Anderson has seen before.
Takes a bit of focus away from the team. Obviously affects the individual as well. So Pete, you've got to try. You spend more time and effort trying to rally around that person and make sure they're okay. You know, there's always stuff along the way, and you know, quite often it's quite trivial, but it's just can get blown up into something a lot bigger.
Anderson's played 18 Ashes tests in Australia, and his experience will be vital for the 10 members of the squad yet to play any.
We've got players in this team that have never played in an Ashes series before, and yes, it's a big series, and there's a lot of history there. You know, the Ashes is a, you know, one of the oldest trophies in sport, I guess, one of the oldest contests in sport. So it's a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. Do you know what I mean? It's trying to find the balance of how important it is and how important is it actually, if you know what I mean. You know, you don't want people stressing out too much. We at the end of the day, we're going out there. It's the same bat you've used for however many years you've played the game. It's the same ball, albeit a lesser ball to the Duke, but it is still red and round, and you've got to try and get the opposition out. And you've got to try and score runs. That's essentially it. It's the same game. We've got to try not to build it up, be something that it's not, to being something that people get really nervous about. You know, it's actually exciting to play, and it's an amazing series, an amazing you know, place to play in Australia. There's some great grounds, and the cricket is always tough, and you know, you find a lot out about yourself when you play in these series. So I think it's trying to just normalise it a little bit if you can to the players that haven't played in it before. And yes, there'll be nerves there. There always is in any Test match we play, but it's about trying to remember the strengths of the individual. Try and remember why you're here, why you're playing for England, and just play to those strengths and try and enjoy it as much as you can.
Anderson was a key part of the team that won in 2010-11, the only team to have done so in the last 34 years. It was an incredible, historic trip, and certainly one that will stay with me forever.
And Anderson moves in, and he bowls to Ricky Ponting, who's edging, and is he caught? He's out first ball. Caught by Swan at second slip. What's going on? Ponting out for a golden duck.
In comes Tremlett. Beer waits for him. He's there and he bowls and he's played into his wicket. It's all over. He's bowled by Tremlett, and England have won their first series in Australia for 24 years. It's their third innings victory as well, and they're gathered together, jumping up and down in that celebratory dance that we saw at Melbourne when they retained the Ashes in the previous match. But now they've done it all in style. They've won the series 3-1. And it has been a wonderful team performance.
We just played brilliantly. We were at the peak of our powers, the whole team, you know, as individuals and as a team. We knew exactly what we were going to do. We knew exactly what each other did and the strengths were. And we just, went for it and enjoyed it. As I said before, like, we didn't take it overly seriously. I think that's one thing that we have done occasionally before and after that 2010 series is you take it ridiculously seriously. Like, you know, we've had meetings before about, I think it was 2006. We just won the Ashes in 2005. 2006, we went to Australia, and we were talking about things like how we look when we get off the plane. We've got to be in suits to make sure we make a good impression when we get off the plane. Like, actually, who cares about that? You know, it's about how you perform on the field. And I think we focused too much on those sort of little things that didn't really matter that much. So in 2010, our sole focus was the cricket. You know, we also enjoyed Australia. We embraced it. We went around. We tried to every bit of time off that we had, we'd go and try and play golf somewhere, or go and see somewhere, go to a vineyard or whatever. We'd try and take in a bit of the culture, which I think made everyone relax and made everyone sort of fall in love with Australia a little bit. It's an amazing place to go, amazing country. So I think, yeah, that is just trying to focus on the cricket and enjoy that if we can.
It's not just Anderson who noticed this. David Malan realised something was wrong with the approach on the last tour.
We bigged it up so much about, the Aussies and the sledging and the crowd and the press and all that sort of thing. And we sort of made it this massive series instead of probably just focusing more on ourselves and not worrying about the other stuff of what we could come up against and focusing on how we want to do it. So maybe that's something we can hopefully turn down a little bit in this one, but it'd be interesting to see how we do go about it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, I guess if you do big up the opposition and the whole environment and the atmosphere, then perhaps that isn't a great place to be, actually.
Yeah, you sort of rock up with all that anxiety and sort of expecting the worst when actually it's a great country to tour. It's good cricket. You're playing an Ashes series, one of the biggest rivalries in the world. It's just an unbelievable experience, and almost to look at it like that instead of sort of this big daunting tour that you're going to go on and you're going to face these Aussies who are going to come at you all day and be in your face, instead of just being, why don't we just do what we do and not worry about what they do, and hopefully we do what we do well enough to keep us in the games and to get us over the line.
Malan was one of the few positives that England could take from their last trip.
Malan's innings has kept England in the Ashes. That's as simple as that. Hazelwood in, bowls to Malan. Pull shot. He's got it. 100 for David Malan. And what a way to do it. Symbolic of his whole innings. He clenches his fist in celebration, gets a hug from Johnny Bairstow. He came out today.
That was one of only 300s hit by England that tour. Malan ended up their leading run scorer. But this time round, his experience of the conditions will be vital for England's top order, especially with two openers who haven't played there before.
Playing in Australia, just from what I've learned, is just by scoring a 350 or a 400 just potentially isn't enough. You have to try and get that 500 plus when you bat. So it sort of puts us under more pressure as batters to actually score really, really big. And when we do get in to score big, and then it's about trying to find ways to take 20 wickets as well. So, it's about that balance of both bat and ball. It's not the batters v the bowlers or anything like that. It's sort of trying to get that whole sort of complete game of taking 20 wickets and scoring enough runs, which it sounds pretty simple, which is the blueprint to winning test matches. But that's the challenge that we have, especially in different conditions.
And the 100 that you scored in Perth, it clearly was a brave innings and all of that. How much do you think that has stood you in good stead for being selected again this time after the break?
Yeah, I'm sure that had a role to play in it. That was 4 years ago, I think now. So, if you'd taken me from one innings that I've had 4 years ago, then, I'd say that could be brave as well. Maybe the fact that in the last 2 years I've played a lot more international cricket, especially in the white ball stuff, and I've performed and put some consistent performances on the board there. And maybe that's sort of, shown the coach and the captain, the selectors, that I'm probably more comfortable at international level than I was back in that time. So it could be a sort of a mix of both.
But yeah, I mean, there were 50s as well. There's that 100 that you scored while the team was losing. I mean, again, that's I don't know how you look back on that in a way. I mean, you tell me, in that personally, you had a good tour, and yet the team lost. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, so if you look at that Perth test, I got 140 in the first innings, and I think we scored 470 or 480, and I played a poor shot to get out.
Line in, bowls to Malan, who goes up and over, he could be caught.
very well caught. Backward point, running catch, and Australia have their breakthrough. Milan dancing down the pitch, trying to hit line over the top, miscued it. It lobbed in the air.
On a really good batting wicket, you know, I could have been batting and probably, you know, if I'd played well enough to got another 30, 40, 50, 60 runs, which could have got us to 600 and put us in a stronger position. So that was, you know, even though I scored 140 and I was happy that I got 140, when you look at the way the game went, we got bowled out for 470, they got 680 or something, or 700, and we lost by an innings. So it's, you know, as good as it is to score runs, it's, you know, you have to score the right runs to win games of cricket. So looking back, yes, good to score the 100, but I probably missed out on scoring more runs in that first innings just by playing that shot that I did that sort of let the Aussies in, and they were able to win a game, which, you know, I think is a good learning curve, not only for myself, but for us going to Australia now, is that when we do get in, actually to make it count and score as many runs as we can and bat as long as we can.
Things didn't go smoothly for Malan after that tour. He played just 4 more tests before he was swiftly ejected the following summer. But he worked hard on his game across all formats and became the best batsman in the world in T20s. I spoke to him at the T20 World Cup in Dubai, and he believes he's a very different player to the one who toured Australia 4 years ago.
I'd say I felt more comfortable. The first time round when you get selected for Test cricket, you know, especially at the time, you know, when I did get picked for tests, did I really think I was good enough to play Test cricket then? Probably not. You know, I thought I was probably lucky to get a Test call-up, considering all the other players in the country that probably have missed out on Test opportunities who've scored a lot of runs in domestic cricket. You know, so you go into that environment and you've got Cook and Anderson and Broad and Root and, you know, Best, Stokes, all these guys that have been such good performers for England and guys that you've watched for years. Suddenly you walk in this team as someone that, you know, you probably don't think you are good enough to be there. And then you start doubting whether you are good enough to be there. And then you start thinking whether you think the other guys think you're good enough to be there. So, you know, I'd probably say I thought about it too much and I wanted it too badly in that first stint. You know, even though I played well at times, I think this time round, after having been playing international cricket regularly, probably for 2 years in the other formats, or quite regularly in the other formats, probably helped me going back in. It's the same coaching staff. You know, been on tours of Rooty after that. You know, I wouldn't say that the players probably didn't respect me in the first one. I wouldn't say that. I'd say I probably earned their respect more by doing so well in the other formats. You know, so they sort of trust you and trust your game a little bit more and believe that you, I'm putting words in their mouth. They probably believe that you're good enough to be there. You know, and it's totally different when you walk into a team not having performed to suddenly having performed somewhere else for a couple of years. You know, it makes it slightly easier. So, yeah, I found this time a lot easier, not because for any particular reason from the team side of view, just from my own sort of probably mindset and thoughts and comfort side.
It's really interesting. I can relate to a lot of what you said there, by the way. You're out there in Dubai and the World Cup and everything else, you know, and clearly very, very important. But is there any Ashes talk at all at the moment? I mean, are you even going to see a red cricket ball or white clothes or anything, or is Ashes completely off at the moment? It's purely World T20.
No, the Ashes for us that are here is completely off. We had a meeting while we were in quarantine, and that was the last time when we discussed all the travel and the rules and all the sort of quarantine and all those sort of things. And we decided then as a squad that was here, all the guys that are going to that Ashes, that this is the last time we talk about it. If there are any issues and you have any concerns, you can speak to Gilo or to Chris Silverwood separately. But for the rest of it, we park it. We're here to win a World Cup. That's our most important. We have, I think the time frames when we do get to Australia are quite short, but we have a 2-week quarantine where I believe we're allowed to train at periods in that quarantine. You know, and I think once we finish here, wherever we finish, hopefully by winning it, we can get on that plane and then do our 2-week quarantine and focus for 2 weeks on the red ball and get back into the swing of it.
It really intrigues me, David. I mean, I never played T20 and anything else, but we end up talking about it a lot. We talked about a lot in the summer about how players like you have to switch, so quickly and hopefully effectively from one format to the other. I mean, Moeen had to do it, didn't he, in the summer as well, pull out of the 100 and ended up, literally a few days later playing in a test match. How do you do it? I mean, how do you actually move between those formats? And is it expecting too much of a batsman like you to just move seamlessly from T20 cricket, 100 cricket or whatever, to playing against a pace attack like India's in a test match?
Yeah, I think I'm slightly different to the others because I'd say I'm more traditional in terms of the way I play across all three formats. You look at someone like Joss who can walk out in a white ball game, first ball of a game, and just hit it 150 meters out of the ground. Am I probably going to do that? Well, I could probably hit it just over the boundary somewhere if it's my day, but I'm more a traditional batter, so my training is all...
Hey, I was in Napier. I saw you smack it around there.
Yeah, well, it happens. We all have our day, don't we? But yeah, I focus a lot on the basics. A lot of my training is done that if I'm in good positions, my base is good, and I'm hitting clean contact on the ball, that each format is just an extension of the other. That's how I believe cricket is. That's my theory on batting. That doesn't mean it's the right theory. It doesn't mean that it makes me successful, but it's, whereas you look at someone like a Mo who, bats at 6 or 7 or 5 or wherever he bats in white ball cricket and has to try and hit the first ball for 6. So he practices that in white ball cricket the majority of the time, and then suddenly go back to test cricket a week later and have to play a 4 defensive. I think that's a slightly different scenario than someone like myself that can just, sort of play the similar way every time and just have a slight extension in each format. I think it does get tough when you, especially if you're searching for things, because there is no time to actually prepare really if you're playing sort of all three formats, to actually, I'd probably say, have a good week or 2 week period to actually sort of switch your mindset, because it's more a mindset thing of you're always looking to score, you're always looking to take the positive option in each format that you play, but there's obviously a balance between it, and I'd say that probably sometimes you get caught in the middle, or you get caught being too slow in white ball cricket because you've just been playing red ball cricket and it takes you 2 or 3 games to get your bat swing and your movements up to the intensity that's needed in white ball cricket, and same for test cricket. Sometimes you're too intense and your movements are too sort of I'd say snappy for what you need in test cricket. So it's it's just trying to find that balance, which can be tough sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, we all know the differences between T20 and test cricket, but for you, the number one T20 batsman in the world at the moment, to be still in a way finding your feet in test cricket again, I mean, does that also rather sum up the differences between the two? Yeah,
definitely. Well, it sums up that I didn't take the opportunity at my first opportunity when given a great opportunity in Test cricket. And I think I'd say probably the thing that I found toughest with the tests was that if you weren't good enough, you sort of went from being, say, you're the number 4 or 5 or 3 for England, to suddenly being out of squads and back into domestic cricket and having to sort of score runs. Whereas you in the white ball here, if you get left out for some other reason, whether it be for balance or for form, you don't sort of go from being, say, England's number 3, 4, 5 to suddenly being out of the squad of 15 to, being totally discarded. You still feel like you're part of the group, and that gives you that confidence.
I can really relate a lot to what David was saying about having to prove himself in the team. That was me 37 years ago. A lot is always made on how you have to bowl in Australia. Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson have played 30 tests in the country between them.
The key to Australia, you have to move the ball. So, let's not get too jumpy fraught with pace. Look at Josh Hazlewood. What does he do? He's tall and he moves the ball. Glenn McGrath for many a year, tall and he moved the ball. So we'll have our plans when we go there, and you need to be adaptable for which players are going to be there. But we have one positive about COVID is because we've had to take such big squads around with us, we've had to look at a lot of players, and that's a big positive.
I wouldn't say I go into a series with a real rigid plan of how I'm going to bowl, because every wicket you play on is different. Every day that you play is different. The conditions are different. So it's about adjusting to the conditions as quickly as you can. and as well as you can. And I think that matters in all games that you play. You know, there will be little things that I'll have in my mind. So like, for example, when you play in India, you know that reverse swing is more than likely going to play a part. So you'll have that in your mind, that you might have to practice that a bit more before that series. So yeah, in Australia, I guess the new ball's important because you don't know how long it's going to swing for, but you will get some swing. And then after that, you know, in my head, I'll go in thinking it's just going to be, I'm going to have to be relentless, absolutely relentless with the areas that I bowl. You've got to be so accurate. You've got to bowl with decent pace as well. You can't just put it on the spot. You've got to really try and hit the bat hard. So those are the sorts of things that I'll be going in with, but it's not like a rigid plan. I'll chop and change throughout the series depending on the conditions.
So do you see that as one of the keys then, patience?
Yeah, but it's I mean, when people talk about patience, sometimes you think it's going to be boring or you've got to be defensive, but actually you've got to be aggressive, but patient with that aggression. You've got to be aggressive in terms of the fields that you set, in terms of the lines that you bowl. You can't just lob it outside off stump and try and bowl maidens. You've got to be, you've got to be challenging the bat all the time. And as I said, you've got to hit the pitch. It's not like generally the ball doesn't swing a huge amount, so you can't just throw it up there like you might be able to do in England and find the nick. You've got to be, just aggressive and really hit the pitch hard. And I think you to be honest, you look at the bowlers that have had success in Australia. You look at Australia's bowling attack. You know, why does Cummins have success? Because he's absolutely relentless with his areas that he hits, and he bowls a decent bouncer. You know, it's not rocket science what he does. There's nothing out of the ordinary with what he does. But he's just absolutely relentless and skillful and does it for a long period of time. So it's either aggressive patience or patient aggression.
Experience of previous Ashes tours is going to be crucial for England in this series. Probably a good start will help, but it's not everything. After all, in the last 2 tours, they've gone in with plenty of experience and have lost 9 of the last 10 tests. So why might things be different this time round?
That's why we believe we can win. We've got some world-class players. We've got, I'd say, the best batsman in the world and the best all-rounder in the world.
I've got a huge desire, sort of like a burning fire, to prove people wrong there and prove that, you know, they've got a bat with fast bowling who are really good, top quicks. So I'm hoping that, I can match them or even better and be part of a squad that brings the Ashes home.
Don't try and be Australia in Australia. Try and be England in those conditions, and the best version of ourselves in those conditions. If we do that, I think we'll be absolutely fine. We're not going there to just turn up and be part of the tour. We're going there to win.
That's next time in the last episode of Project Ashes.